good, y'all? So 3MDs. My name is Kennedy.
My name's Derek.
I'm Trevor.
All right, today we have an amazing guest, one of my good friends from the University of Texas. She completed her medical school degree at McGovern School of Medicine in 2020. So right now,
Okay.
Clap it up.
I've seen her on Twitter, on Instagram, being an advocate for minorities in medicine. She's a voice of med at Twitter, I think, and she's someone who is going on to do big things. She got accepted to do her residency in pediatrics and internal medicine at the Johns Hopkins University. You know, she's been brilliant and just a great voice of reason. So it's an honor to have you here, Crystal. And just in case you didn't miss anything, can you please just inform us about your journey up until this point?
Yes, of course. So thank you for having me. I'm always excited to chat with people who are very passionate about making sure that there are more people who look like us in medicine. So congratulations to y'all for creating this platform. I know it's really important. A little bit about me. So I'm originally from the Dallas-Fort Worth area. I went to the University of Texas at Austin, Hook and Horns, and I studied the humanities, which was probably like the first thing that I was like, am I doing this pre-med journey, right? Like, I'm in the College of Liberal Arts, like I'm taking sociology classes and history classes, and I took a really interesting film course. But I realized, and I hope everyone realizes, that the best thing to do is to study what you're passionate about, because then it won't feel like you're studying so hard. And for me, wasn't passionate about biology or chemistry the way I was passionate about the humanities. And so I was able to, really make good grades, but of course, things like OChem and chemistry still exist to cause me pain. So struggled a little bit with those courses and was never a really strong test taker. So struggled with the MCAT as well. But all in all, I realized that I had the experiences that I believe that would make me a good doctor. So I applied. I was accepted to McGovern Medical School, where I fell in love with primary care. I have a really big passion for social justice and realized that primary care was the best way for me to work on the issues and to be close to the people that I really care about. But then it was like, all right, now what do you do? Like, what specialty do you decide to commit yourself? And for me, it was internal medicine and pediatrics. I get an opportunity to see some of the most complex patients, follow them throughout their life, and really just get an opportunity to engage with community activism, especially at the program at Johns Hopkins. It gives me a perfect opportunity. It's all about primary care in urban health settings. And so I'm excited. So all of that has brought me to right here in front of you all.
Wow, that's awesome. Awesome. Because I have a question for you.
Yeah.
So I mean, just based off of you, like, wanting to just like be very outreaching and things of that nature. What was it about like internal and peds that sort of kind of, you want to use that as a platform to like get your goals across and things of that nature?
I think the things that we do in childhood matter for how we turn out as adults, right? I think anyone can tell you, like, if you have a good childhood and like you're studying hard from like day one and you've got a nurturing environment and your family is set up for success, this just all propels you into having a great adulthood, right? But unfortunately, and I think we know that there are too many Black and brown kids who don't get the best chance at life, right? That's structural racism, that's oppression, that's poverty, that's discrimination. That all adds up into complicating all the things that kids may just have asthma, right? But a Black kid having asthma, like think about all the things that go into that, right? And then at some point, that kid turns into an adult, right? And pediatrics has a phenomenal basis for advocating for people. In internal medicine, the focus is a little bit different, but that voice of advocacy is still there. And so that's the reason why I was like, okay, I want to pair my interest with kids, with adults, and realizing that there are issues. It doesn't matter if you're 5 or you're 55, structural racism still exists in your life. There should be someone who's able to advocate for people across that lifespan and really be able to look at a family unit and say, I feel comfortable taking care of all of you all and addressing not only your pathological and the diseases, burdens that you may have, but also being able to look at your environment and talk about that as well.
Oh, that's amazing. That's amazing.
I think it's real dope that, like, especially for you being a Black woman in medicine, like you have a very unique perspective of what medicine is. And it's interesting because I know that you're real active on like Instagram and Twitter. And just how has social media shaped how you view medicine and your journey through medicine?
I think one of the best things you can do is put people who look like you and who are doing the things that you want to do right in front of your face. Make it easy and accessible, which is why I love following all of the Instagrams of like everyone, right? Like my friend like runs like Black or White Coat. Like I just love seeing it because it's like, okay, I'm gonna get to do that, right? Like when I see graduation photos, like I am always reposting. I'm always like hyping people up because I'm like, that is where I want to be, right? And I think the same thing with Twitter, following people who I'm like, oh, they're doing that, like I want to do that. And it's such a leveling, like an equal playing field on Twitter. I can sit there and have a conversation with the head of X, Y, and Z famous university, and it's just like talking to a friend. And so I think it's really connected me to some mentors. I like tweeted about something and then someone reached out and was like, do you want to do a paper? I was like,
Wow.
yeah. Yeah, that was like the moment I was like, oh, this is serious. Let me start watching what I tweet. And then it's been instrumental throughout the interview process, being able to talk with residents and kind of see like, oh, like they're tweeting about those kinds of things. I'm interested in those kinds of things. Maybe this program would be a good fit for me.
And we've also noticed your involvement with AAMC. Can you please touch on that? We actually also have a fellow partner here. Trev is actually our academic rep for AAMC as well.
Oh, that's awesome. And so I will say that my involvement with the AAMC like starts with Brandon. He is Black Man in Medicine, my like mentor, like goals for me. He's currently a second, I guess going on third year ENT resident in Vanderbilt. And just when I started at McGovern, he's like, hey, Crystal, I want you to like run for this OSR thing. It's with the AAMC. And I was like, my only involvement with the AAMC is the MCAT. And like, that wasn't my greatest experience. He's like, no, there's so much more to it. And so I ran for that position in my first year of medical school. We go to this big conference and we're like looking at national leadership, and Brandon's like, oh yeah, that's going to be you. Like you're going to run for national leadership. I was like, I just got here. Like, I don't know what you're talking about. And yeah, over the years, I ran for national leadership. I had the privilege of serving, and now I'm finishing my term as the national chair. So I'm currently the immediate past national chair of the Organization of Student Representatives. And thank you. I think I'm the only like physician. Yeah, I'm the only physician because I just graduated. The rest of them are still medical students. But it's been a great 3 years working nationally on a lot of issues that affect students daily.
And have you been involved in any policymaking that you can shed light on?
So I think the biggest thing, so right now, obviously with the pandemic, I've been on multiple calls with senior leadership and with leadership across the country talking about the MS3 and MS4 kind of situation, what it's like to return to clerkships and what it's like to interview. And I've also had an opportunity last year, which is ridiculous how fast time can really pass, with the Invitational Conference on USMLE Scoring, known as INCUS. And so the biggest thing that probably came out of INCUS that most people are familiar with is the change to pass-fail with step 1. And so those are the kinds of conversations I've been in for quite a long time. And so some of those things have had my input in them as well, which is pretty cool.
And speaking of step 1, I know that a lot of second years across the nation are like kind of in a frenzy because they kind of don't know how to study for step 1 or how much time to dedicate because dates have been changing left and right.
Exactly.
I know that you were involved in, I guess, the changing of step 1 from graded to pass fail. How do you, from the outside looking in, now that you're in residency, how do you, what is your take on the change? So
it doesn't look like the NBME or that kind of like those organizations are going to accelerate the change to pass fail, which is unfortunate, but I think it really calls on residency programs to say, okay, like we believe in holistic review, let's really be about it, right? Like we can't just say, yes, we want to have the most diverse group of applicants but then still do the same things, right? Like you need things to change in order for you to like get the change you want to see. So I think for students, it's so imperative that one, you take the time to just relax. Like I remember telling one of my friends, like, just take a day off of studying, just one day, like having your dates change all the time. It's annoying, it's frustrating. Like do not be afraid to just take a day to yourself. And then second, really look for programs that emphasize how they're going to use step 1. Ask those questions. Will you be using a screening? Like ask residency programs to really kind of put that information out there. I think you deserve that. But I also think find comfort, although it's really hard to kind of find comfort in studying for step one. It was not a happy time for me. No, it wasn't a happy time for a lot of us. But realize you're not the only one. You are not the only student whose date was changed. Like I know someone who like drove and got ready, in their car, drove to their step one site only to find out, okay, the location's been closed. They can't take their step. So realize you're not the only one who's going through this, and kind of have this faith of like, okay, like I'm not the only person who's going through it. People have gone through terrible things in the past. People will continue to go through terrible things in the future. Unfortunately, this is just my terrible situation to deal with. But at the end of the day, if I want to be a physician, I will be a physician.
Simple. Y'all have any questions for her?
Dude,
I think, I just want to comment on that. I think that's what the dopest part about just like this whole climate right now is especially with like Black people in medicine. I think we celebrate each other a lot outwardly more now than time before. So like even when you go on Instagram, like 5 years ago when I was applying to medical school, like I didn't see a lot of that,
Mm-hmm.
And so you never really thought it was possible, or even if you did think it was possible, you didn't know what route to actually take. And I think that's why it's like really good to have these conversations, this dialogue, because in my opinion, I think just being qualified is more of an opportunity than it is like your self-worth. And like you really don't get to see that and dive into that until like you're actually in this position. So what are your thoughts on that, as far as like, people's journey to medicine and how like your journey has shaped how you are in the future, like who you were before to what you are now, before you were Dr. Nwora?
It's still so weird. Like sometimes people will message me and be like, Dr. Nwora, and I was like, wait, who? Like, I like literally like 5 minutes ago, I was just a regular MS4 student who was just like chilling here, and I'm supposed like, oh, this doctor, like it's got some weight to it. It's a little heavy. Like, okay, all right, heavy is the head that wears the crown, but I'm about it. Yeah, I think what you're saying is exactly right. We have seen, I think, just a tremendous amount of representation on all platforms from Instagram. I mean, maybe not all platforms. I don't know what's happening on Facebook. My mom still uses it. Maybe it's happening there too. I guess why bad? But from like Facebook to Instagram and to Twitter, of just again seeing people just in them, people being really honest about it. And I think that's the biggest thing. Like when I was applying to medical school, like I had this idea, okay, you need to be a 4.0 biochemistry major who's like published 3,000 articles. You were like first author on all of them. And you also like found the cure to cancer and like you give to puppies in your spare time. Like I thought like you had to be like this perfect little thing. And I was like, okay, I'm just gonna try to be that thing. And then you get to med school and you realize people are here from all different types of backgrounds. There are people who are here as a second career. There are people who have taken gap years, who worked as scribes, who worked abroad. There are people who speak all different languages, who studied music and the arts, and like all of them are going to be fantastic doctors. And I think one of the best things about like your platform and what we're trying to do is show people like there is more than one way to be a doctor. Like if you know that like being a doctor is the calling on your life, the way you get there does not, and it should not look like my dreams are not necessarily y'all's dreams. Like we may have these same overarching goals and like, want to see more people in medicine, but I am not a surgeon. Thank God there are people who like to cut. Like if y'all relied on me to be a surgeon, I'm sorry, we would not be getting far as a society, right? So just as, there are many parts to a body that all function to make us work, there have to be so many different ways for us to approach medicine in order for us to move the field forward.
That's great. So, Chris, I actually have a question for you, right?
Yeah.
What's one thing that, like, throughout your 4 years of med school, what is one thing that sort of kind of nothing could have prepared you for? And I know it's like a really broad question, but like, what was there one time where like you were like, damn, like nobody told me like it was gonna be like this, or it's like a low, and how did you get past that? Like, what did you do to like get past that?
So I think, that's a good question. Something that I just could not see how difficult it would be to like work with your peers, which is like, cause I feel like I'm a nice person. I like people I think generally like me. But when you're in that third year, clerkship environment, and all of a sudden the people you thought were cool are like suddenly they're gunners, and you're like, whoa, like why'd you throw me underneath the bus like that? Like what? And you're just like trying to figure out like how do I play these team dynamics? Like, and I was like, I am not someone who like stews on like my interactions with people, but then I'm like, all right, so if I ask the intern now if they have any work? Or should I ask the intern in like 10 minutes? And like, what is the best way for me to signal that I want to go home, but that like I'm an engaged student who like really wants to help, but I honestly need to study for this show. Like, it was just like, I was like, I didn't know I was an actor in medical school. I was just like, yeah, pretending sometimes that you care when you're like, I don't. Looking at your classmates being like, could you be quiet? Like, all those things in third year, I was not prepared for.
Oh, no, it's very interesting. Very interesting. It's funny that you touched on that, because actually my big has actually, some of the things that you just talked about, he's like actually been on the phone, man, like literally complaining about like, I have to stay this time, I gotta do this, I gotta do that. So it's really interesting that you touched on that.
Yeah.
So going based off of that, we know that you're going to Johns Hopkins for peds, right?
Med peds, yeah.
Nice. So what was it about like Johns Hopkins program that like really drew you to that instead of any other program?
So I was like, okay, I'm doing this med peds thing at the beginning of the year. So January of my third year. I'm so kind of halfway through third year. I was like, okay, like I don't really know what I'm like. I hadn't been in like interest groups. Like I hadn't spent that time that a lot of people spend like building up research and finding mentors in the area. And so I was like, okay, like I'm just gonna Google. I'm like, okay, I know I do med peds. I know I do primary care. Like maybe Google will help me figure this out. And yeah, like Johns Hopkins program was like one of the first to come up. And you know, we all think about the imposter syndrome. I was like, who am I to think that like me could apply and get an interview and go to Johns? Okay, whatever. You know, but I was like, so you know, you like to give yourself a little pleasure, just like look at it and be like, oh, what would it be like? So that's what I did. I looked at the program website and I was like, wow, like they have everything that I want. Like they have an emphasis on women's health and like, you know, jail medicine. They, you know, talk about incarceration. They are talking about structural racism. I'm like, whoa, is this possible in a program? And it was, but then I was like, is it possible for me? So I go through the interview and there are a ton of really great med peds programs there. Like 77, I interviewed at about like 14 or so. And I was like, wow, there is something that's like really special about all of them. But for me, it really came down when I was ranking. I was like, okay, do I think that this is an achievable goal for me? I was like, you know what? Like, you just got to follow your heart. Like, let's just rank Johns Hopkins #1. And if God wants me to go somewhere else, like, God in the natural will determine where I go. So it was obviously in his plans, which I'm so grateful for. But, and then the people too, like med Twitter, right? Like I started following one of the interns there, like having conversations with him. I was like, whoa, like this dude's talking about the things that I like to talk about. And then when I went to the pre-interview dinner, everyone who knows me knows I love podcasts. And they were just talking about podcasts. I was like, I found my people. So that was just like the process of it. And I just think the biggest thing, especially any advice I can give to anyone going through this process, I know it looks different. I know it's going to be hard to like kind of figure out what the vibe is of a program. But honestly, find ways to connect with that program, whether it's social media, whether it's calling residents. Like, do not be ashamed to send an email to a resident and just be like, hey, I'm interested in this program. Would you have 15 minutes just to talk to me on the phone? I did that for maybe like 4 or 5 programs, even before the application season started. And it was really helpful for me to kind of figure out, okay, what kind of program would align with my goals?
Important, like, a lot of the times, I think that's one thing that people overlook is just like the people you're around can really make or break your experience, you know? Like, obviously, me, Kennedy, and Derek are in Ohio right now, and I would have never thought I would be in Ohio. Like,
and no, honestly.
From Washington to New York, but I just flew right over Ohio, right? But like, being here, you kind of value a little bit more of like like being in a people setting, you know? Because in medicine, it's very competitive, you know? Like, you're basically in class with a bunch of people that are probably the top of their class in undergrads, right? So it's like that same energy gets transferred in medicine. And if you don't like really open up and try to find out who people really are, like it can be a real like, you know, shitty situation. But luckily, like I think our class did a really good job of, you know, we had a good group of people that we can really talk to and connect on a different level. And it's really dope to see that that's what drew you to Johns Hopkins program is just the people and the climate that it was in. So it's really dope.
Definitely agree.
I think that's pretty cool too. But as we all know, we've been in quarantine and COVID. We had a few questions for you. Like one, like what have you been doing? since quarantine? Like, how have you been dealing with the stress? Do you please expound on that for us?
So, bro, it all started when Vicky sent that email saying match day ceremonies will not look the same. I was like, are you serious? Like I remember like taking pictures at like last year's match day, being like, oh, like I want to stand right here. I'm gonna wear this outfit. I'm gonna look cute. It's gonna be great. And then I was like, you mean I'm gonna have to do this from my apartment? And I can't have more than 10 people in my apartment? Okay. And I was like, you know what? Like maybe a miracle will happen, because I had tickets. I was supposed to be in Bali on a beach with a nice drink in my hand with my girlfriends. You know, like literally think of every really nice montage of girls just, woo, yeah, no, that was supposed to be me. And for some reason, I didn't think to delete those notifications on my phone. So when it was time to get on the plane, my phone was like, don't forget to leave in 15 minutes for the airport. And I was like, no. But I will say, I, instead of going abroad and like traveling all the plans I had, I just went home back to Dallas, and it's actually been pretty nice. My grandma lives here. My sister, who goes to University of Houston, is also here, and my brother and my mom. And so I don't think I would have ever gotten this much time to spend with my family again before I started a residency. I started planting, like that was fun. Like I have a green thumb, I can make things grow. I really wanted to get some of my grandmother's history. Like my family's from Nigeria. My grandma has like all these like stories, and I'm like, oh, like wouldn't it just be cool to just record some of this history? And so I just, oh yeah, like I've got time to do that. Like I can ask my grandma, but like what was it like to, you know, go through the Biafran War, and like just what was it like to be a young person? Like what were your dreams and your hopes and your aspirations, and just have that on camera. And so I think it's been really fun to kind of find some passion projects. I'm like, I wouldn't have necessarily had time to do them, but now that I can do stuff like this and like talk to you guys and talk to other people who are interested in medicine. And so a lot of different things. None of them I had anticipated on doing or having so much time to do, but I just trust that God's got a plan for all of this. And so hopefully I've helped more people out, probably through checking out their personal statement or helping them out with some advice than I probably would have in Bali. But you know, that country will see me again. It just won't be now.
One more question for you. Okay, so based given the like everything that's going on, right? In your humble opinion, how do you think like this is gonna just change the scope of medicine, whether how big or how small? Just like, you know, with everything being quarantined and, you know, like telemedicine and all these things doing different things. Like, what is your perspective? How do you think things are gonna change in your opinion, like going forward?
Yeah, I mean, I think telemedicine is going to be something that people really look into, especially like think about all the small things that like, oh, I just need a refill, or okay, I don't want to drive out so many hours to go see my physician, or I can actually do this over a lunch break, over a secure video call, as opposed to having to rearrange my entire schedule to go to the doctor. So I think telemedicine is really going to be something that we're going to see grow. I think probably the biggest things, and it's like one of those things where it's like you feel like people should have gotten that, like structural racism really does like make a difference in people's lives. But if not, you know, during any of the hurricanes that we've had, if you didn't get it during Hurricane Katrina, if you didn't get it through Hurricane Harvey, you're going to get it through this COVID pandemic, right? Like you're going to have to understand that the structural inequities that have been built into the healthcare system and built into this country at large are impacting people, and they're causing premature deaths. And COVID-19 is not an equalizer. If anything, it's revealing the deep cracks in our society and how we continuously have let people fall through the cracks. And, you know, just seeing all the numbers of like how many African Americans are just dying, you're just like, yes, like I can tell you, like that shouldn't have been a surprise to anybody. And so I think people are going to understand, hopefully, that we've got to start tackling some of these social determinants of health and really calling racism out by its name.
Thank you for taking the time to just inform us about what you've been doing in this time. We want to say congratulations on not only graduating, but getting into residency at the Johns Hopkins University.
Oh my gosh.
Yes. We know that you're going to do big things, and it's just a pleasure that you've taken the time to speak on our platform. Just 10, 15 years down the line, when we say, hey, Crystal, just, you know, be like, remember, you know what I mean? So